All right. Hello and welcome to the first official formal episode of the Real Life Friends podcast. I've got Joe here with me, who I can say is a real life friend in the sense of we've met on TikTok. He's come into the real life, whole life community, and we have got to connect and go over so much in the past year and a half or so, and just really got to know each other and know what we're up to. And Joe is also a neurodivergent content creator in that world. And so we have a lot that overlaps there. And he participated in the first rendition of what I launched as The Experience, which was a very experience for me that was very, how would I say this? In neurodivergent fashion, I scared myself. I tried it, it worked. I scared myself, and I'm present to that again of starting. And that's really what we're doing here is starting is I'm launching this and reached out to Joe, and he was eager and willing to leap with me in this. And so A, just thank you for being here, Joe. And B, I'd love for you to take a minute to say what shows up for you and one of the best neurodivergent questions of like, talk about yourself, and your brain goes like, that whole thing. That's usually how it shows up for me. So I
Right.
know I'm not
Yeah,
passing you off an easy question, and anything that show up for you when it comes to getting started here.
that's all right. My go-to is I'll just start talking and talking and talking until you'll just have to tell me to stop because sometimes that happens too.
Yeah.
So it's either like one or the other. So we'll find out how that works right now is either I'll just talk for 30 minutes and people are just like, why, wow, this guy won't stop talking. So we'll see.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I think I mean just to introduce myself a little bit, I'm in my 40s. I've had ADHD. The first time I was diagnosed was back when I was 11. And so having ADHD my whole life, it's something that's very, it's a big part of my life. I think what's changing for me, and what I'm happy to be here, and what Jenna has put together is just having a space for me that I'm learning, and it took me 30 years to get here, is to accept my ADHD as something that I have, and to kind of learn skills through it, rather than I think when I was 11 and when I was growing up, the thought was just don't be that way. And that's kind of the coaching and the what I heard for so long is like, oh, you have ADHD, okay, just don't do that. And it's like, I don't think that, and I get frustrated at myself, like, okay, I'll just stop doing it. Wait, I can't stop doing this. Why can't I stop doing this? I must be broken.
Mhm.
Um, and it's taken me all these years to kind of just come to the conclusion of, you know what, screw it. This is who I am. And it's funny that TikTok actually helped a lot with that, where I joined TikTok a few years ago just because my daughter was on it, thinking it was just a bunch of people dancing and didn't think much of it. And then the amazing algorithm just suddenly shot me toward the ADHD crowd and the depression crowd and the neurodivergent crowd. I was like, oh, these are my people. They're actually here.
Yes.
Um, and so it's been an interesting kind of journey over the last couple of years of coming to the conclusion of, I have ADHD. This is who I am, and these are the flaws that I have, but these are also the good things that I have, and those probably won't change, whether they're good and bad. Like this is just who I am, just like everyone else. Like everyone has good and bad things about them. They have flaws, they have good things, and we all just work through them. And as we learn people and we get to know people, we learn, especially how depending on how close you are with them, but you learn how to deal with whether the flaws or the good things. Instead of the thought of, like I said, for 30 years ago, the thought was just don't be that way, and realizing now is I'm going to be that way, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the change is happening over the last few years, and especially the last year and a half is just changing that belief in myself of I don't have to change. It's just who I am,
Mm-hmm.
and the good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of where I am in my journey today, is just understanding that that's part of who I am. And if you're going to be my friend and you're going to know me, that's just going to be part of who I am. And if I don't text you back in 2 weeks, I have to be okay with that, because that's not anything bad against you. It's just I forget and things happen, and suddenly out of sight, out of mind, as often happens with people with ADHD. And it's not beating myself up over things like that anymore, because I used to do that all the time,
Mhm.
and just beat myself up over being forgetful or not texting someone back or things like that. And I think one of the things that I've learned over the last couple of years is to not be that way, is to
Mhm.
not beat myself up over just something happening that was just a simple mistake. And that's kind of where depression and ADHD is where I was for so long, is I make a mistake and very quickly it was like I always say, like I'd make a mistake and within half a second my brain is, I'm a terrible person, and my depression tells me I should die.
Mhm.
And it was like an instant. And that is a lot of just, the thought process of what, I should be different rather than accepting who I am. And so, this week is, I had a great example yesterday of this, and I thought about like this interview today, but because I was my son, it was so simple. My son needed his nails clipped. He's 7, he's almost 8, and he needed his nails clipped. And I was like, I gotta clip his nails. And all week I set reminders. I like after school, I was like, we gotta go home and clip your nails. And the week went through and I totally forgot. Like a week later, I was like, I forgot. But 2 years ago or 5 years ago, that would have set me on a tailspin of like, I'm a terrible father. I'm full. I can't believe I forgot this. What father would forget just simple things like this? And just 5 years ago, that would have been my reaction. But yesterday, I just laughed about it. It was like, guess I forgot, and I moved on, and I didn't have this like existential crisis because I didn't clip my son's nails, and that was a huge win for me. That was a big growth step. So,
Yeah, I hear
uh,
that. And I hear
yeah,
that how you say an existential crisis over something. My dog's nails, while dogs and humans are very different, all that to say, there's something around that process I have so much resistance on, and that existential crisis you go into. Like, and it's this, what I see as a nervous system biological response that we've been programmed into, because you have from a young age, and those that are neurodivergent, it's like, I'm grown up this way. It's just wrong. And I don't know how to
yeah,
do anything different. Now, have you heard the Simon Sinek thing where it's like, it says, don't think about an elephant, and instantaneously your brain
yeah,
thinks about an elephant. So it's like, don't do this. It's like, well, I'm going to now do this. Like, you've literally locked that into my brain. And just the way we
yeah,
really have not, I mean, even I don't even question mark if current times even are account for that, allow for an environment for a kid to thrive, whatever form they are. And so yeah, to know that from such a young age and work to go against it, when you're like, the solution was to never go against, is what I'm hearing. It's knowing that it's just a flip of resources,
mhm,
a flip of abilities, quite honestly, is what I'm seeing. Like, yeah, I don't do this well,
yeah.
and I actually do other things well. Just because I have ADHD doesn't mean that I just dysfunction. I still do things
Right.
well. And I know for myself, and I think those in the community struggle to acknowledge that there are things that we do well. Like, there's just such an overarching shadow of everything is not good. That, at least for me, is that experience is really hard to be with things that I do that are good. Like, it's hard for me to see it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of just been the change for me, is seeing the good
Mm-hmm.
in what I do, because for so long it was, and it's probably self-fulfilled prophecy too, of me just assuming that it's bad to be this way, and so I shouldn't be this way, and then I'd act that way, and then I just like that circle of like, I'm a bad person because I act this way. I act this way again, and I'm back to being a bad person. It's like getting out of that cycle for me was tough, because it's like I grow up and I see everyone around me, and especially as I got older, like it's, kids, it's expected. You have ADHD, you're hyper, it's not a big deal. But once I got into my 20s and 30s and career, and having those same symptoms as an adult, and not changing, and not having, I'm not a kid anymore, but I'm still suffering from memory loss and energy and things that I just can't do. I just, focus and all these different things. And the older I got, the harder it became. I became harder on myself, because seeing all the success around me is like, the horrible Facebook culture of, everyone posts everything good about their lives. So, I get focused on that too. It's like, look how great everyone's lives are. And here I am, a mess.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really not a mess. Like, it's just where I am in my life, and I'm just different. And I've grown to love that I just seem to have more fun than a lot of people. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the benefit of having ADHD. I have the energy of a 20-year-old in a 43-year-old body. So I'll take that. That's okay. That's okay. Like, I'm gonna be happy about that. So,
Good.
but yeah, I think but that was tough. And like I said, the last couple of years have been beneficial, like through your group, through just the TikTok, through videos, through just connection with other people with ADHD, specifically adults.
Mhm.
Because again, it's really strange to talk to. I shouldn't say strange, but I think it's very tough for me. I'll just speak for myself, to talk to people who don't have ADHD, to adults who don't have ADHD, because like they don't get it. They're like, just don't be lazy. Like, just remember that. Like, well, I don't understand why you can't remember to cut your son's nails when you have to. And so it's very, and not that they'll say that, but you can tell that like they don't know. A lot of
Yeah.
times they'll say that to people who don't have ADHD and they don't really know how to respond because for them it's very easy. They remember and they just do these things. And so having a community where, just to talk to people who kind of struggle with similar things and can relate really has helped me over the last few years,
Yeah.
which is great.
The struggling through things that are simple is one of the most like frustrating experiences, because you really truly experience yourself as incompetent because you're like, this is so simple, I can't do it. And that was for me a catalyst with getting diagnosed, was like, why can't I unload the dishwasher? Like there's something here that I can't do. And for me, it was getting things broken down into one-dimensional steps and in an I can do context. And then when I don't do it, it's like, oh, it doesn't live in a system that makes sense, that's autopilot. And so for me, I just begin to learn when I don't do something, it's like, oh, it simply hasn't been created in a way that works for me. And that's where I get into like self-discovery of like, how can I make this mindless, and living in a space of wanting things to be mindless. Because for me, I personally see like that's the ultimate echelon way of living, is like to live in a place that's mindless, where I just don't have to think about it and it's just autopilot. And there's so much that's just not there yet. So yeah, I see that our limitation creates a world that actually is better.
Mhm.
And more expansive and more all these things. Like we do have this like childlike energy that we love showing up and experiencing together. And then you go into the rest of the world and it's like, no, behave, don't do that, operate this
Yeah,
way.
right.
I don't want to live that way though. Like, why is this a problem? And
Yeah.
yeah, I guess the question shows up there. Do you feel like having kids has given you more of that permission to be childlike in a sense with the life and where you're at?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I think but before I had my firstborn, I remember talking to a buddy of mine and he said, "You know what the best thing about having kids is?" And I said, "What?" He goes, "You can go down the Nerf aisle in Target and not be judged for it as an adult." And that's absolutely true. It was the best thing ever because it's so true. I get to act like, I mean, I coach my kids' basketball teams because I get to act like a kid and I get to have fun with them all day and have that energy and running up and down the court. And so it's definitely helpful, and it's also a little funny because my daughter has been now diagnosed with ADHD, and so she is just watching her, and it's actually really nice because she'll do something or she'll have questions and something, and I'll just say, I struggle with the same stuff, like not being able to focus in class or not remembering that I had homework to do. Not that I didn't want to do it or didn't do it, I simply forgot, and she struggles with the same stuff, and it's nice to like have that dialogue with her and like just kind of that understanding. Like I just had a conversation the other day just about college and school, and I said she's like, I want to go to college and do this, and I don't know if I'm gonna make it into college. And I said, just do whatever you need to. Like I didn't go to college. I went to community college. I didn't get my degree until I was 26 or 27, just because of different reasons. I chose to work. I had a job at 18, and that's just who I was, and I needed that. I didn't. School was never my thing, and I think it's people take a lot of times people will hear that and say like people say school is not my thing, and judgmental people will hear, oh, you're just too lazy for school, and that's not the case at all, especially for someone with ADHD. School, if you're not passionate, at least I'll just again speak for myself, but I've seen that a lot with ADHD, is if you're not passionate about the subject, it takes a lot to spend time like learning and having to write reports or do something. If it doesn't like strike you as a passion, it becomes extremely difficult to do. And so I get that. And so that's why it took me a little while, just like I wanted to work and get to know people and stuff like that. So yeah, I think having kids definitely helped and made it okay a little bit to be a kid again and act like a kid. And my kids love it, like it makes them happy. So and that's always fun just to joke around and have fun that way and laugh. So
Yeah,
um
I
but
can't say I've met someone who's neurodivergent who doesn't want to apply themselves in an area that they're passionate about. Like it's not a matter of like, I don't want to work or I don't want to do this. It's like, I'm trying to find where I can express this burning desire to do something. Like we have this burning desire to do, so to be judged as lazy and then we don't want to, so invalidating, because it's like I can't stop and I don't have a place to put this. And so that's what's so hard too. And I just think of all the classes I've taken that weren't whatever. It's like, yeah, I learned how to fake it in a way. Like it was just the effort and the pain to to take stuff in that has no, like, again, our brains don't work without interest. And so to take stuff in without interest, like it's literally biology, biochemistry in the brain firing, like you're missing the firing of the synapses when you don't have interest. And so the degree of like physical pain that's actually created for someone, and it's like, oh, you're just lazy. It's like, no, it physically hurts me. It's not like, I guess like maybe I'm quote unquote making it up because it's my brain that's making it. It's just also scientifically proven that I am making it as a real thing, not just up as an imaginary thing. So being able to know the science behind it, it's like, no, my brain literally fires less without interest. So that's validating. And I just see there's not a empowerment to get people connected into where they're passionate. Because once we're passionate in a space, like we are people who rock, like shine and are such rock stars and such like over performers to a degree that like we like the untapped potential. That's what I've been saying with a friend. This the untapped potential inside of the neurodivergent world is outrageous if you really get to looking and being with people who are in there.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely true. I think there's a lot of untapped potential in a lot of us. Like, because I mean, just speaking for myself, like years of judging myself and trying to be quote unquote normal, kept me from a lot of passions that I knew I had.
Mhm.
And because I had to be normal. And, a 35-year-old shouldn't do whatever, I can't think of an example right now, but it's just like, I'd always judge myself. Like, that's not what a 35-year-old should be doing or a 40-year-old should be doing. And instead of being like, this is who I am and I'm just gonna have fun with life and not judge myself for it. Like, I'm laughing at myself right now because I'm looking at myself and I see like there's a shadow and I don't have enough lights and for a while like I judge myself. I'm like, oh man, I should have got a better lighting. I should have done this stuff. And so I'm like sitting there focused on myself. Like instead of, I look like like someone interviewed for 2020 and they're trying to like hide my identity, but instead of judging myself, I'm just enjoying it and thinking it's funny. So
Yes.
uh
It's so real. And saying that stuff does truly shifts the difference too, and just like exposes it. And quite honestly, I will put it through the context of how I'm operating. Like I'm in the space of starting, and really the intention of all of this was starting. And so I simply am like, you showed up exactly as you are. Like that's how I see it. And so to be able to shift and be able to be like, you're willing to show up when the lighting isn't perfect. Like there's something more valuable that in that for me than waiting to do it when it's perfect. Because
yeah.
usually that just doesn't happen. And especially in the neurodivergent spaces, showing up and doing that shows the permission of like, do it when the lighting's bad, do it when the audio is bad, do it when it's
Yeah.
terrible. And while it's humiliating, I also discover, well, it can be humiliating. I talk about myself when I look backwards and look at some of my stuff. I'm like, this is humiliating. And there's also like, I got to actually grow and develop, because if I didn't start, there's no growing and developing and getting better. So I got to start somewhere. And really that the desire of what I'm doing here and what I'm starting is like, I've got to start somewhere. I live in a privileged space. I have like I had never turned lights on in my house. This is the natural light in my house at all times. So all that to say though, I just acknowledge you saying that, and B, just the I see it as, I'm so grateful that you would still show up inside of the not perfect spaces.
Yeah, I think that's again just kind of accepting who I am. I
Yeah.
mean, I'll always I think it's one of those strange things, and I think this is common with ADHD is it's the strange kind of I guess juxtaposition of like my brain wants to be as perfect as possible, but my ADHD keeps that from happening, or at least makes it extremely difficult. And so it's an interesting kind of it's fascinating to me that that's my brain of like I need to be perfect, but I also have ADHD that makes being perfect extremely hard. And
Yes.
so that's like not judging myself for not reaching this perfection because one, like you said, it doesn't exist. Like it's impossible to be. No one's perfect. Everyone has flaws. But it's also like that judgmental side of me that's like, oh, I should have gotten put up a ring light or something, or I should have done something like judging myself poorly. But I don't do that nearly. Like again, like I mentioned a few years ago, I think I would have left this call like, oh, that was terrible lighting and beating myself up for it. But I'm not going to do that today. Like it's just not a waste of energy. So
I love
it's
that.
a nice change for
I
sure.
love that too, is it opens up the door for those that I want to invite on here where we feel like I'm not good enough or adequate enough or not at a level enough to start. And what I really want more than anything is just level playing field, all of us coming together, and every single human has a valid live experience that is worthy to be seen and known. And there's just such
Yes.
deep wisdom behind every single person that speaks. And so, and especially in the neurodivergent world, I'm just going to say this because we like hyperfixate on everything. So the degree of untapped potential and wisdom that we carry inside of our bodies that we don't tell people about, I'm like, there's stuff in here that I want to find. We're going to solve all the world's problems because that's all we do every day. We just don't talk about it publicly. I'm like, we literally are constantly inside of wanting the world to be a better place to work for us, and we just don't know how to get there.
Or I just forget.
Yeah, that's true too.
I might have a great idea, and then 2 hours later, like, what was that great idea?
I have a
That
theory that
happens a
they
lot too.
never go away. I feel like they always come back to me better. That's how I've learned to live with my ideas. And I used to write everything down, and I'm like, if I let it go, it comes back better. So that's now my
Yeah.
like how I let it live, because I used to get so much anxiety. I'm like, no, this idea is so good, I can't let it go. And I'm like, no, let it go. It'll come back. And then it usually comes back in the form of a TikTok. And then I'm like, okay, now I got it saved, and now I won't lose it. I'll forget it, but I won't lose
Yeah.
it and go back to watching it. Uh, and then the world of starting, if I'm recalling correctly, you're looking to, I mean, you've already started on TikTok, you've already created content, and you're in the world of kind of leaping even further into that world right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've developed content, but it's been, I want to say, a year since I've actually posted anything. Like I was posting a lot and then I stopped, and it's just been on my mind to kind of jump back into it because just kind of the support that I've gotten through ADHD and just kind of doing those videos for myself. I think even in my TikTok bio, I said something about like these videos are for my future self to look back on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very true. I still I look back on them and just kind of remind myself where I was at that time in my life, and even if it was just a year ago. So it was very beneficial for me, and I got some good responses, and it was just kind of a lot of fun for me. Again, I just kind of try to look at it. What's a passion of mine that I enjoy, and my day job is editing and videos and voiceovers and stuff. So to be able to kind of use that and move it to TikTok is just kind of a fun thing to do. And my daughter's getting into it because she always liked to show me her edits because she knows that's what I do for a living. And she's like, look at my edits. I love editing. So it's kind of fun stuff to do with her and just kind of show her what I'm creating and talking about. So there's a lot of win-win situations for me to create content and just kind of dive more into the ADHD and just be more of a kind of just working with people, like getting to know people with ADHD. Because I think one thing I know we've talked about is, I've watched a lot of TikToks and I've talked to a lot of people. But one thing I've haven't found a lot of is people who have been diagnosed like me for 30 years. Like it's been over 30 years since I was first diagnosed with ADHD. And so there's not a lot, I don't find a lot of people like that. And so to be able to have a voice and to speak like, hey, people have ADHD their whole life, and I'm one of them. And I'm on medication, but it doesn't fix everything. And this is what I'm doing. This is how I feel every day. And this is what I do every day. This is how I deal with the pros and cons of having ADHD as a 40-year-old. And that's important to me because I know that's something I would want and something that I would need to kind of look back to me as in my teens, 20s, 30s, and what would I appreciate at that or those moments. And it would be nice to know someone and watch videos or at least know that there's people out there that have had ADHD their whole life and they're living through it and they're learning through it and they're okay. And not be judged for it. And so that's kind of where I am. And I just love, and it's a passion of mine. Like I just love talking about mental health, and that's a big, just in all different aspects. I make amazing TED Talks in the shower, and so we mentioned that before. So it's just I always think I mentioned like if I could do a TED Talk from the shower, it'd be the best TED Talk ever. But um, but yeah, I think it's just I just have a passion for talking about being neurodivergent, especially my depression. Talk about my depression a lot, just because it's again things that people. How I grew up is not to talk about that stuff, or at least it's uncomfortable to talk about that stuff. And um, it's nice with ADHD is that a lot of it makes it easy because I can just talk about anything at any point, and I don't really have a filter sometimes, which is again an ADHD thing that's both good and bad. But it's helpful in the sense that I can talk really openly about my struggles with ADHD, how it's a struggle in relationships, how it's a struggle in family, it's a struggle with career. Like there's some struggles, but on the flip side, there's some great things that ADHD brings to relationships and family and career. So to kind of know all that and to talk about it and be open about it is really important because it's something I didn't have throughout the years of my ADHD since I've been diagnosed. And it's nice to have that outlet for sure and to be someone's outlet, which is nice.
What shows up, do you feel like those in your age bracket or bucket would likely to be diagnosed, or is it uh often maybe overlooked in the world of your generation getting diagnosed?
I think it's overlooked. That's a good question. I'm not sure. I've seen. I think one of the issues to kind of before even that, I think I go back and forth because I struggle with because there's that belief of like someone's either hyper and they're like, oh, I have bad ADHD, and that term gets thrown around a lot. And there's a lot of me that's like, I know that can't help it. It's just people's vocabulary, so I'm not like judging people for using it, but it does make it a little bit of a struggle because it's kind of become a joke to a lot of people in not a bad way, but it's like, oh man, I can't stop, like I have so much energy, I have ADHD, and it's become not a serious thing. And I think that's where I'd like to kind of get the word out of ADHD is a serious mental issue that I struggle with, and I have to work on every single day, every single hour. There are things with my ADHD that I have to work on, even if it's just as little as like I'm moving my leg too much and I need to stop. And there's things that I have to work on daily, and I think that's the hard part for adults to either not get diagnosed or not understand,
Mhm.
especially like that not understanding of like why can't you just stop? Why is it hard for you to stop moving? Because I'm constantly moving. There's part of me that's every second of every day. There's a part of me moving. Like right now, I'm squeezing my toes. Like I have to be moving something at all times. And a lot of times, if I'm around someone long enough, they'll eventually ask, "Can you stop moving?" Like that's a question that always happens, and it's like, no, like I can, but it's a conscious decision. Like for you, it's a conscious decision to move.
Mhm.
Mine is a conscious decision to not move. And that simple thought is very confusing for people who don't have ADHD because they're like, "What do you mean?"
Yep.
And so just getting the word out as an adult that it's okay to be like that. It's okay that I can't stop moving. It's okay, and to talk about what it's like to have ADHD. I think getting diagnosed is tough, like I said, because there's that judgment behind it, or the belief that it's a kid disease. I think that's a common thing with adults
Mhm.
that kids have it and you grow out of it as an adult. I hear that. I've heard that a lot,
Mhm.
and that's not clearly not true. Um, I always joke that I've gotten diagnosed 6 times throughout my life because I keep forgetting I have it. But it's true. Like I have to keep going back, and they're always like, "You have ADHD." I was like, "Yeah, no shit." Like, of course, like I know I do, but it's just to me, it's just getting the word out that it's okay to have ADHD as a 42-year-old. It's
Mhm.
fine. I just have to kind of, there's things in my life that I have to put in there to help direct me in ways different than other people, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And just getting the word out, like you said, to the older crowd of knowing that it's okay to be like that.
Mhm.
Um, so my dad's the same way. My dad, I don't think he's ever been diagnosed, but he moves constantly. Like we always joke about it. Like he moves his feet. Like as a kid, I remember him sitting on his chair watching TV, and his feet were like hitting each other. Like, and he'd always joke about it. So it's just kind of he had it as a 60-year-old, and so it's okay that I have it in my 40s.
And one a stat that is so fascinating for me, that concept of stimming and moving your body, increases focus by 400%. So the ability to focus and be still and be present, 400% improvement when you are moving, and how much we don't have a way of acknowledging and just, yeah, there's that experience of, I'm just remembering a situation of someone whose like spouse was like put their hand on their spouse's knee to like stop moving. And it's like, no, there's this charge in us, that I personally just don't see we get to express, because again, we're like, you need to be in compliance. And so there is a world of that doesn't work for us. That is what I find the whole like, oh, I think I have ADHD or might have ADHD, or yeah, I have ADHD too. And I'm like, if you actually knew the constant battle that is the experience of having ADHD, you like, if you have it, then get diagnosed so you can actually be empowered with it. But like, if you don't, like, they're like talking like you have it is offensive to someone who does, because it's like it's just there's a dismissiveness of the fact that it is
Yeah,
permeates every it's, and again, there's research on this too, that ADHD impacts every single area of your life. Like you can't, it is the way you see the world, and the world is not fit to match the way you see it. So you're left with a disconnection and an impact that is resistance and pain and that judgment of self and just this constant inner world that is quite honestly detached from anyone seeing it. Like, and I think that's what I
Yeah.
would say is what we're getting to experience, and why I want to create what I do here and why I'm up to doing what I'm doing is like, I want us to see that we're not the only ones living inside of this experience. And it is very, very, very challenging, for lack of a better word. And when shifting the context, there's a world that we can like tap into and leverage it where it actually can be good, or leverage. Like there is a way to live with it that is empowering.
Mhm.
If it's disempowering, we're just all the worse already. Like we're already in that bucket. So how do we kind of shift over into an empowering one when you understand it? If that translates. I feel like I went in both
Yes.
different directions there.
I got it. I got it. Yeah, well, yeah, I think I really resonated with the dismissiveness of it. I think that happens a lot, is the dismissiveness of ADHD. And I think that's something, as the older I get, the more I see it as an adult. Like the older someone gets, the more they dismiss the ADHD symptoms, which is dangerous in a lot of ways. Like, and just in the sense of like people don't understand that it doesn't go away. Like they just expect it once you turn an adult, you won't have ADHD anymore, and that's not how this works. Like depression doesn't go away just because I'm happy.
Mhm.
And it's the same with ADHD. It doesn't go away because I'm older.
Mhm.
And so it's just like that kind of getting the word out, understanding. And it's not just getting the word out for me, it's also finding other people who think the same. Because I know when I'm around other ADHD people, it's like the best time in the world. Like we have the best time because we're okay acting like a kid, and
Yes.
we're okay running around making, being silly, and not worrying about, specific, adult things. Like I can go down a hike with my kids and run around and play tag. And not that people without ADHD can't do that, but it's more of like it's just that energy's there, and
Mhm.
just being able to have fun that way, and look forward to it and enjoy it. I think that's a definite thing, that it's okay to be hyper
Mhm.
and fun, because there's that, and especially there's that whole culture of alpha males and how they have to act, and that goes against a lot of what ADHD is too. And that's a struggle in the sense of like, no, I'm not going to be what you might think of what what the world might believe what a real man is. And I think that's also a big part of what I want to get out there, is like there is no definition of a real man. Do you have high integrity? Then you're fine. Like that's a good man. Like
Mhm.
that's what it's about. Like there's not like a simple way to act. It's more about what your motives are and things like that. So it's just a lot of like things of getting together with people and having that community and talking, and just having, and just finding out what you're into right now. What's your passion? What are you passionate about? Because like you mentioned and we've talked about, and that's one thing that I believe is such a common theme with people with ADHD, is that I've seen, is that when we're passionate about something, I don't think there's anyone in the world that could be more passionate about that subject. Like if someone's not if not neurodivergent, is they're passionate about something, but I'm passionate about the same thing, I will like research it to death. Like I will be the expert within a day on what makes a cat meow if I feel like searching what that is.
If
And
you
I
tap
will
on
know
my phone right
everything.
now.
Yeah, right. I'm not going to stop until I know everything there is to know about
Yeah.
a cat's anatomy and why they meow. Like I'm gonna learn that, and that's my passion right now. And so it's just things like that I find fun, the ADHD. And my daughter we always make fun of each other about that. Because I know the dumbest facts about things. I shouldn't say dumb, but I just know facts about things that she's always like, "How do you know that?" And I always say, "I have no idea." Like
Yeah.
I don't know when I had that important thing for me to research that, but I somehow know this weird fact that I just told you, and that's fun. I think
Curiosity,
that's
like
yeah,
the way we are curious, and give us the internet now too. It's like the curiosity can be satisfied, where before there was like you couldn't tap into. I mean, you guess you had encyclopedias back then. Back in the day, I remember having my encyclopedias. It was just you're curious, and so
yes, yes,
for that
yes. Oh my
thread.
gosh, yes. This and that's such a like unlocked a memory of those encyclopedias as a kid. Like I definitely looked those up and like research grasshoppers or something,
Yeah.
just because I wanted to
But
learn
you
everything
like
there is to
you
know.
just had one paragraph about grasshoppers. Now you've got like YouTube videos
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all these
It's a
other
little
things.
worse, I bet.
And you find someone
Yeah.
else who's equally passionate at the moment, and you can do all their hyperfixation. And so, yeah, I
That's
really see
absolutely right.
so much
Same with
there.
TV, like entertainment too. Like I get focused on entertainment, and I find myself really over passionate. I shouldn't say over passionate, like just super passionate about TV or movies that deal with mental health in a very unique and interesting and very accurate way. And that's really, I'm really passionate. And the two that I can think of right off the bat that I love, that I've watched repeatedly because I personally have learned a lot and I get a lot out of them, is one is Ted Lasso, and it's an insanely accurate and amazing show and has so many good mental health accurate things about mental health that I love, that I've watched every episode at least 3 times, I think, at this point. And it's such a good representation of what just a good person should be, and how everyone's not perfect, and how there is different types of mental health, and how to act with, and if you don't have that, like they talk about anxiety a lot in that show. So that's a really good one. And then the movie that hopefully wins Best Picture, Everything Everywhere All at Once, is amazing. Like if you look at that and go into that movie and thinking about the woman has ADHD. And if you look at that movie through the eyes of the woman having ADHD, that movie will blow your mind. And
Not
it
heard
will
of it.
be it's the most it is just the most beautiful, and people find it weird. Like I'll be honest, I find it interesting that a lot some people find it very strange, because there is very very strange parts to it. But if you go into it looking at it as a mental health story,
Mhm.
specifically if I read somewhere like someone's like, just look at it in the eyes of she has ADHD, because she goes in all these different worlds and stuff. But it's good relationship with her and her daughter. But it's supposed to win all these awards this year.
What's it
But
called
the
again?
acting is it's called Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's
Mm.
hilarious. But like I said, it's very strange. Like there's no doubt that it has some very strange parts, because she goes from like these different, yeah, multiverses,
Mhm.
uh, but not in a comic book way, like in a realistic, like I shouldn't say realistic because it's very weird, but just in a more with an environment of living in reality. And so it's just I absolutely love it. I've seen it at least 3 times,
Where do
and I
you
probably
watch
will
it
watch it
at?
again. I don't think it's streaming anywhere. I think it's just for sale. I bought it just
Okay.
because I loved it so much. Like I own it just because
Okay.
it's fantastic.
Okay, cool.
Um, but it's great. Like that's what I like. I like looking at entertainment and seeing what I can, and pointing people to that. Like if you're really looking for something that will just explain or help you understand or feel better about it, like those are the two examples I can give right now for people to go watch
Yeah, I
right
was
now,
gonna say,
because I love both.
would you be open to putting something together, being a TikTok or another list, and I'll include it in the notes here of kind of if you have a handful that we could share, because I think that would be an awesome resource. And yeah, tag.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Okay.
think I've mentioned this before to a lot of people, but my my mind is constantly going because of ADHD. And really, one of the only things that calms it is movies. And I don't. That's just how I grew up. I've always grown up watching movies, and because I learned very early on as a kid, it was one of the things that stopped my mind. I could focus on this world that's on the TV or on the movie theater, and everything else, all my anxieties would just drop, and I'd be able to focus. And it's why I'm kind of a movie freak because of that. Because it's one of the few times where my mind stops. Like I shouldn't say stop, but it's focuses, I guess. And
So
because that's
the
very rare
science
for me.
behind that, I'm not the best at knowing my brain states, and I'm pretty confident you're in theta when you're watching a movie, and that is when your chattery mind does go down. So that's in the world of meditation, and those that I'll do guided meditations that will walk you into that space, because it is really hard to find, and movies will tap you into that theta, and it is like medicine for the neurodivergent brain and body,
Mhm.
because we really don't have a path there, and we just don't have an environment that acknowledges what we need to get us there. I have a really close friend who has put together it's like a mind movie, quite honestly, and it is like a meditative state that you can get into, and it's been
Yes.
therapeutic for me, because that's what I've had to come to when with like meditation is a mind movie, and finding resources that do that, because it really is the degree of therapy that can come from that is powerful. And I just like the word meditation does not work. I now have been working on it for 2 years, so now I can learn to do that and trust it. It's just like you're instantly like, no, I can't, like, do not make me, because the path to get there is just not accessible.
Right.
And so there's that. And then that's something I'll be working on the community too. I'm calling them self-love sessions. So they're essentially meditative conversations. And so it walks you into a space where you can kind of like begin to be with some of the stuff that shows up. It's just not fun. It's so flooding and overwhelming. And then you got to try to figure out how to get out of it. And there's just a whole world there that why I see, the repetitive movies and things like that are super common in the neurodivergent world, because there is this caring for the brain and body that is unlike anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it's those. You say talk about meditation. A lot of movies are a meditative experience for me, and again, it's one of those things that's very difficult to describe to someone because people are just would look at it as, oh, you're just lazy, but it's like, no, I'm really getting emotional validation a lot of times when I'm watching these shows or movies, and it's hard to really explain that to someone who just looks at it as you just watch a lot of movies. And it's like, no, this really helps me emotionally and a lot. I mean, I've been going to the movie theater by myself since I was 21. Like I go to the movies by myself a lot because of that specific meditative experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it just really helps my mind and soul in a lot of ways that I hear people talk about meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something, again, something I used to judge myself for, like, oh, I watch too many movies and I'm lazy. And it's just within the last few years where I'm like, no, screw that, like this is who I am, and I'd like to go to the movies. I like watching movies, just it's part of my personality. Why am I judging myself for something that I'm passionate and I love learning about how movies are made, and that's okay, and that's not a downfall. It's not something that's negative about me. It's just who I am as a person, and I should jump and enjoy that, and just jump in and watch his name, watch his movies all the time. So
I hear it's, and for you, it's something that you are active, engaged, and aware to. It's not simply this like it's something that, again, that passion, that igniting, like you are present when you're doing watching these movies. So it is a degree of therapy, not to create to create comparison or judgment if someone isn't or is. It's just, I'm hearing you're experiencing it is like we all get to choose what we do with our time. And so for you, if that's a life-giving thing, like it's wild how we can be like, you are now less as a person because you do this, like just the way we judge people. And it's like, well, what do you do with your time? Like, why is that?
it's it's that whole judgment of like every generation judges the next generation on things they do, even though it's very similar to what they did. They don't recognize it. Like,
Yeah.
it's like people. It's just the different generational gap happens a lot. Like everyone thinks the best music ever created was the one that was in during high school. Like everybody thinks that, and so it's it's just how it is. And so it's just that generational gap of, oh, you're watching movies, you must be lazy. It's like, no, I'm getting a lot of creative juices. Like I do a lot of creative for my work, and I actually get a lot of good creative ideas by watching movies, just by the camera shots or how it moves, or dialogue, really well written dialogue. Really, it's funny how that excites me. Like there's things that excite me that other people would think I'm insane, but if I'm watching a movie and I find really good dialogue, I will rewind a scene just to watch the good dialogue again.
I don't
And
even know.
rather, like,
That's not even a concept I even know about. Like the concept of good dialogue. That's a whole
yeah,
nother.
it's really it's just fun. Like it's just fun for me. Like it's just, again, like it's very hard. It's just very hard to describe. It's just a huge passion of mine. Or I love, like, if I'm watching a movie and they don't cut for like a couple minutes and it's like one long take, I recognize it and I love it. Like I go crazy for movies like that. Like it's just, I just love being able to watch and say it's like a play. And like, there's a movie called Beast that came out with Idris Elba. It wasn't a fantastic movie, but the whole movie, every scene was one shot. There's like 8 scenes or 10 scenes of the whole movie, and every scene they tried to make it look like one shot. Even the huge lion fight at the end was one shot, and it was like blowing my mind. And then I went online and was trying to research it, and everyone was like, "Oh, the movie was awful." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Did you notice that the guy fought a lion and they never cut? That was amazing." And people just didn't recognize it. And I remember, and I'm like, "Man, I watch movies differently than some people."
I really hear as you're saying that the common experience of like each person who's neurodivergent people, we just have a different way of seeing the world. Like we just
Yeah,
see. My dog decided to bark. We have our unique way of seeing it through our passion that completely alters our, we just see a different, like we have a completely night and day different experience with someone. Like it's, and it, to bridge those gaps, yeah, there's something there.
yeah. And it makes my passion for TikTok, like, so it does the problem with, I shouldn't say problem, but I struggle with content in TikTok because I want to go on and make a video about the movie Beast, and then my next TikTok I want to talk about how my depression is bringing me down. Like, let's not go. That's not a TikTok account that really works well because I don't really have a
Says
content
who?
focus.
Says who? I personally believe that it's you. And I'm like, when you were talking, I'm like, there's so much here that I want to hear about TikToks. And I do see that's a gift with TikTok is that they don't expect you to be niche and you can go in any direction.
Yeah, it's true. Again, that's definitely a judgment I just said about myself. It's like I feel like I can't because I feel like I have to have a niche on my TikTok when it's like just do what I want. Like if I want to do a movie review on top of how my depression is affecting me today, I should just do it and not be okay with that.
You're in the neurodivergent bucket. I already know, and hopefully someone will respond here and when watching this of movies and depression, those passions coming together. I'm confident that's a whole niche putting together. There's a whole group of people that are in
Yeah,
that bucket that
yeah.
yeah, just that there's a whole world there that is real and just there's a whole
And I'd love to make like a list of movies and TV shows that either accurately represent mental health in a good way or just make me feel better. Like just are good. I mean, that's what Ted Lasso to me is like it does both really well. It's a feel good, makes me feel amazing, like just laugh and cry and just a really good emotional show, but it also represents mental health in a really accurate and good way. And so that's I mean, I could talk for hours on how great Ted Lasso is. It's my favorite show ever. So
I'm excited. I've got that written down. I've got the other one written down. And then what shows up for me too, um, yeah, just in movies, there was something else that showed up and I've so being so hypersensitive emotionally, I have such a hard time with movies because they are intentionally trying to get you to be moved, touched, and inspired by what you're watching. And then I'm
mhm.
like, my knob's always turned up in that way. So then I'm just like bawling my eyes out. I'm like, I have this like full emotional experience. I'm like, I'm too exhausted. I don't want to experience. Like I cry like Shark Tank. If I watch Shark Tank, I'm just bawling the entire time. Like I could just feel people's emotions so much. I've even had experience one time watching a comedy show that someone made a joke about like a digestive issue and I had like a digestive issue response. Like the degree of impact that I have, like I'm so protective of what I watch because I'm just like I literally take it on. Like I don't know how
Yeah.
to do that. And so I'm just
Well, see,
so
that's the part I like. Like I
yes.
like that about myself, and so that's why I think I like those movies because I'm able to put myself in those situations, and it
Mhm.
lets everything else melt away, and I can just focus on the situation, even if it makes me like bawling like like a the kid.
Yeah.
I'm still focused. I'm still getting it because I'm focused, and that is a gift for me is to be able to focus and feel emotion like that because I'm so focused. And
Yes.
that's where I feel good about that. Like I like that I can get so invested because it makes me feel alive. Like I'm actually emotional. I can actually
Yes.
relate and have empathy with this person that doesn't. Well, I mean, another for me, it's like I think of I don't know how much you watch football, but like that football player who was had CPR on the field. Damar Hamlin is doing better. I was watching that game with my son, who's 7, and I had to explain. It's a very rough situation of having to explain, like my son, like this person's getting CPR on the field, and it was very scary. I mean, everyone thought he was going to die, and like on the field, and it was just an awful situation. So to be able to like talk with him, and when we find out, we found out he was okay and he was like waking up. I literally started crying, and I'm like, wow, this really affected me, like more than I expected it to. Like I had no idea that this player I didn't know on a team I wasn't really a fan of was really affecting me, and I looked at that as a great thing. Like it showed that I have some, I'm have that empathy of, and I teared up with my son as I told him that he was better, and my son was super happy, and
Mhm.
it was just a really nice like when I feel those emotions, I always am excited. Like okay, I'm not. Because again, it's just like growing up. It's like with ADHD, I've always had big emotions like that, and there's always that judgment of having those big emotions. And instead of beating or pushing those emotions away, thinking that a real man doesn't have those emotions, kind of belief that sometimes unfortunately happens is doing the opposite and just being there with my kids and being there just for myself and being okay with crying and being okay with being super happy for this family that I don't know that I'm a big a big football fan, big Chargers fan, but after that injury I could care less about the Chargers. Like I could care less about football. I just wanted this man to be okay.
Mhm.
And when we find out he was, it was just really a beautiful moment that I mean, the whole sports world came together. And it was just a really beautiful time. And it was really I always look at those moments as really a good moment for humanity almost. Like, I was watching the game yesterday and two players went out to center field and kneeled and prayed for a good amount of time. alone in front of everybody, like a whole 50,000 fans. Only two players went to center field and prayed, and it was just very for this player. It was for this player who was in the hospital. It was just very just emotional. It was just very beautiful,
Yeah.
and having
Everyone,
those emotions to me is great.
something that everyone's coming together, like that experience
Yeah,
is so rare and so needed and so moving because we are so divided. So anytime we can come together, like it's so powerful. And I just, as you're speaking to, and with just the generation and where you're at, like what was coming into me was just like this concept of like sticking out like a sore thumb and the strength that you have to stand out and be like, no, I'm going to be this way. And I really see the world is catching up to us in this way of showing that emotions are powerful, showing that caring is powerful, like showing all these things, and the stamina it takes when you already are struggling emotionally, mentally, physically, like the stamina it takes is to hold that is like a whole beast in its own. And so I just see that in you and acknowledge that in you is like, and even just seeing it in my own self of like standing out when you are fragile emotionally, fragile mentally, like the people don't acknowledge or see just how hard it actually is, because you're like, nope, I know that this is going to count for something and I have no proof. And really just seeing that full circle too, with A, starting here, and B, within the conversation of starting, like to be able to start when you have no proof. It's really hard emotionally, mentally, physically for the neurodivergent brain. Like there's a degree of challenge that goes unnoticed. And yeah, I've just wanted to deconstruct that to really empower people to start, because we do have so much passion. And I think too, I find this in myself too with creating content. Like I'm so passionate that I almost feel like I'm so intense coming out of the gates. And so I know, like looking at some of my content, I'm just like, you're so intense. And it's like, but I also don't have it regulated yet. Like I'm so uncomfortable. It comes across because I'm uncomfortable, and like being able to acknowledge that it's okay. And just people are so judgmental in the beginning. And so I'm so judgmental in the beginning. And so yeah, I just appreciate you coming in with that.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think what makes it's kind of going back to your point of the reason why the reason why that I stay kind of when I was, flipping through TikTok, it's like when you stop at certain TikToks, the reason what made me kind of stop at a lot of these creators, especially yours, is just that you are yourself. I think that the not perfect, kind of like, my whole shadow on my face, like it's the same thing. It's like I think the not perfection is perfection kind of belief of there. If someone's too perfect, there's almost like that going on. Like that's like not possible for something to be that perfect. And so to have to be able to feel comfortable enough to not really be concerned, and just being able to talk your, say your piece and talk your truth and all those different things. There's a lot of power to that for a lot of people, and that's the power that I see, and that's the power I see from your content and from your community that you've created and things like that. Is just I can be myself and not have to worry about, I can come to a group and be shadow faced, and I can I can talk about anything. I can not I can I can talk someone's ear off and about movies, and people are just gonna understand and not I'll be like, why do you like movies so much? Things like
Uh,
that.
I'm confident. Then I think that's what we're discovering with the algorithm and TikTok, is that you get to be yourself fully. And when you are yourself fully, then you align to people who want to align with that too. And then that's where these connections that you can have. I just experience it daily, it's easy to keep going. It's like, I know the people I connect to are so in alignment with me that I'm going to keep going, because it's undeniable. Like, and that's one thing with the season I've been through. It's like, I don't like the word caliber, because it creates a judgment. It's just this experience of like the people that I know are with me and on my side and on whatever that is there. It's just this, like, they're doing the work. Like that's what I'm just present to. Like
Yeah,
they're the concept of like critics and those that are on the same side. And it's like, it's just the world of critics when you go to start is so loud, and we are, obviously our own critic too. We have the hypersensitivity of knowing what they're thinking. I'm just like, I'm present to the people that are doing this with me, and I'd rather do it this way than the other, because I would rather connect with real people than create a whole platform because I performed and then not have anyone present in it. Like it's just, that's where I've just had so much resistance in creating perfect and from a perfect place, and why sometimes I'm like, I probably could do a little bit better. Like I could probably step it up just a little bit, because sometimes I can get really like, it's fine, I'm still in like my hair from my shower. I'm like, this could go to 1 million views. Maybe I should brush my hair. I don't know. There's a world that gets just acceptance, full acceptance. And I'm really getting the experience too. The people get to come as they are, where we create these environments that you're gotta like, I gotta put it together and I've got to be like stress regulated to be able to be present. It's just you don't get to be with the person.
Right. Well, I mean, it's like my own content. Like the one TikTok I made that had a lot of views was one that I literally just did on my bed that I was just like really interested about that I just made on a whim without really think I had no thought behind it at all. No thought to what I looked like, no thought to anything. I just was like quickly record it, post, and just kind of forgot about it. And then suddenly it had 100,000 views and growing. And I'm, what happened? Like what I, how do you even how
Yeah.
does that even happen? So it's just it's funny to me that like you can spend all this time on content and then get nothing, and then you just randomly do one as you're out of the shower and combing your hair, and suddenly there's 500,000 people that liked it. So it's you never know with social media now, like who's
Never
gonna
know.
like
And this, and I've discovered like the second I get in my head and start thinking about what I'm doing, it stops working. It's just so hard because I want to have the plan and the proof and the safety and the, all the things for my mind to be at peace and ease. And it's just this process of starting is so just leaping and getting
Yeah,
to
well, it's so true because I mean I judged my I mean I think I was like driving the other day and I remembered the story of how I was attacked by a raccoon. So I like filmed a TikTok like the whole story and I loved it. It's always been funny and amusing to me. And I stopped it and I saved it as a draft and never posted it because I judged myself. I'm like, oh, this is not people aren't gonna like this, or I need to be more clear on what I mean. But then it's like, even talking just now, I'm kind of like, I should just care. It's just post it. Like it's my content. Who am I doing this for? Like why do who's gonna see this? And if even if someone does judge it, do I even want like that's someone that I don't even want in my life if they're gonna judge me harshly for a random story I did. You know what I mean? So it's funny that I judge myself so harshly the same way. So anyway,
yeah.
it's getting to the point that I'm just gonna get off this call and just post that story again
I'm so excited. And
because
it'll
it's
be
funny to
great.
me.
Then we can for those that watch this, hop on over to your TikTok and watch the
That's right.
review.
Well, I judge myself more because you couldn't hear my voice really well, so I had to use one of those voice changers that doesn't sound like that's kind of popular on TikTok. So I have this weird voice, and so I'm like, oh, is this gonna look kind of lame? Because I'm like, again, I judge my age. I'm like, I'm 43 years old and I'm using these voice filters, and I'm like, why am I'm thinking way too much about this? Like, do you like it? Do you find it funny? Post it. Period. Like, doesn't matter what other people think. Like, I find it funny.
Yep.
And that's all that matters. Like I had fun doing it. I think I let my daughter listen to it, and she thought it was hysterical. I'm like, just post it. Like it doesn't matter. Like why
The
do I
process
judge myself so much?
pioneering, and I think that's what I continue to see in myself and others is this like as when we much of what's getting created, and I think most that are connected to me are like the word that I use is embodied. Like we're creating content as ourselves. Like that's it. So essentially you're always pioneering because there's no one else like you. There's no one else can create something like you. So it's this pioneer experience always. And then you get to find other people who are also pioneering, which helps the process. Is just the experience of pioneering is very is not fun or easy half the time because you're in your head judging yourself against something that literally doesn't exist. And
Yeah,
so you're judging yourself against something that doesn't exist, trying to be something that you aren't, which the only way it works is if you are who you are. So yeah, it's this like conglomeration that just locks you up and makes it so you can't start, which is much of what I'm continuing to want to dissect here of like pioneering. I really think that's what
yeah,
I think that's what honestly, and I will say this too, quite honestly, with neurodivergent content on TikTok, I think all of us didn't know what we were doing. And then just by chance, we all came together and we're like, oh, something got created here. And I think that's what
yeah,
I want to show off in the with the platform I've got is like, I think we all just hit TikTok to share something and then it became something. And I think most of us are like, oh, I don't know how I have followers. I don't even know what I did to get this. So like, let's like, where are we
yeah,
at? How do we do this? And so much of what I'm out to do in this next year is bringing neurodivergent humans together. And I know at least starting most of those who are content creators are the ones that are like, okay, I'll go because I've been doing this and I've learned how to do this. So with that,
right.
and yeah, none of us know what we're doing. And I think that's what I want to kind of expose at the same time.
That's well, I mean, it's like everybody, right? It's like I think I can't remember where I saw it. It was somebody, some kid asking an adult, like, what is it like to be an adult? And it's like it's the same as being a kid. We don't know what we're doing. We just have more experience of not knowing what we're doing.
Yeah. And I
something
have to
something
pay
along those
for the house
lines.
you live in. That's all, like, pretty
Yeah,
much. Like, I just have to make sure you have a house. Like, now I've got just like the income demand, which is a whole nother beast.
yeah.
All that to say, in the world of starting and all of your content and all of that, anything else that shows up for you that you'd want to encapsulate into this conversation?
Just a kind of the one thing that I've learned over the last couple specifically, it was October that my therapist had told me a quote that I will live through to the day I die, that I've just really helped me see a lot of different things differently. And I'm gonna mess up a quote, but this is how it is. I don't remember it's line by line, but it's essentially, I mean, my depression has always been about self-blame, just blaming myself for everything that's happened. Like every bad thing that's happened in my life is my fault. Like that's kind of where my depression, that's where my brain takes it. Like if I just did things differently, things would have happened differently and been better.
Mhm.
And my therapist will notice that, and I've seen a lot of therapists. It was the first time that I've ever had this thought, but she just kind of said, she said this quote is, self-blame is a way to have the illusion of control over a situation that I had no control over. And
Mm.
I've lived by, and it was just like literally I've never been mind blown by a quote before. I've never, that's a good quote, but that one like changed my life and
Can
my
you say it one more
perspective.
time? I want to be with it one more time. What was it?
Self-blame allowed me to believe an illusion of control that I never had. That's another
Mm.
way to put it.
Yeah.
It's just basically like I blamed myself for situations that I had no control over. Like I don't have any control over all these situations that I'm blaming myself. And because it was either nothing that I did when I look back on it, or it was just situations that nothing anyone did had any control over.
Yeah.
And that's where it's an interesting perception for my own life, is figuring out, okay, now the next step is figuring out, why do I blame myself for things that I shouldn't be blaming myself for? Why is it easier for me to blame myself than accept that I have no control over it? And so that's just, but it's that understanding that everything's not my fault, even though I have ADHD and I forget things and I do things differently. It doesn't mean that it's my fault that these certain things happen, either relationships ending or all these different things that I just love to blame myself for, and all these different things, and only myself. And when I say self-blame, I'm saying 100% of the blame. Because obviously there's situations that, there's some things that I could have done differently, but my mind has always been, it's 100% my fault. All these situations were all my fault. And that's where it's like that quote helped change it. It's like, oh, maybe these things aren't all my fault. And actually, not maybe, they aren't all my fault. And that's where that change has happened over just since October. That when she like read that to me, I have, like I said, it's just been, I think of that quote every single day. Every single day that I find myself blaming myself for something, that a nail not clipping my son's nails, or some big life event that happened. If I find myself, and that's I now that quote immediately pops in my head. It's like, you had no control over that. You're blaming yourself over something you absolutely had no control over, or it's just things that happened, and that's okay. And just kind of understanding that has really helped me going forward. And that's kind of what I hope to give out to the world, is that understanding of
Yeah.
moving on, and understanding that you don't have to jump to I'm a terrible person,
Yeah.
instead of just understanding that you had no control.
And really what I hear is that distills down even further that really self-blame is an illusion. Is what I really see, is
Yeah.
just an illusion. And I'm creating it to harm myself, like an illusion I'm creating. And so I appreciate you sharing that, because I'm going to be chewing on that quote and chewing on that all the more, because it's powerful. And I hear like the antithesis of us functioning as being neurodivergent. Like if we are in blame and we're the problem, we're literally stuck and we can't move. And so being able to shift that by seeing it, it keeps us in creativity. It keeps us in the possibility to keep moving. Because even in the nail example, it's like, if you are blamed, then you're just going to perpetuate that again, because it was an illusion that you created. It's your fault, compared to staying in like, it wasn't my fault. What can I create, or what can I do, or how can I, either just move on and it's not even anything, or do I want this to actually be different? And how do I create here? Because I really truly see, if we're not rooted in that creative state, it's like, it's just, we're done so fast. And
Mhm.
the program we run is, I mean, shame is one that I think is it's a problem for everyone. It's just simply like, I see it as life and death for those that are quite honestly neurodivergent. And
Yeah.
so it's something that I want to speak on loudly, which I'll add this to, just because I know this is the content you create and what you're passionate about. If someone's watching today and is in the world of depression, is there anything you would
Mhm.
say, just from your own personal experience of life-giving words, that you would give to someone in that space? That's where they find themselves today.
Wow.
Not to put
Yeah.
pressure on you, just need to see if you.
No, I get it. I think I'm just trying to think things that have helped me. I think knowing, and this is going to be a very generic answer, but I know it helps me. It's just is being with people who understand you and finding people that understand you and will sit with you and not give you advice, not try to make your life better, but just understand you.
Mhm.
And if you don't have those people, there's people online that you can find. Like, I mean, I would say I'm a resource. Like, there's all sorts of people that you can find, and if you don't have friends around, you can find someone with TikTok or someone that you can relate to. That at least you have that interaction with someone, because I've always found that if I have a constant interaction with friends or family or somebody that knows who I am and understands me and is not going to judge me for doing certain things, it really helps my depression, because my go-to when I'm super depressed is to isolate, and that's the worst possible. It's like basically having fuel to the fire at that point. Like, I'm depressed, so I'm not going to tell anybody or talk to anybody, but it's just a perpetual terribleness. I guess it just makes it 100 times worse, instead of just like calling up a friend and being like, "Hey, I'm struggling right now. Like, I don't need advice. I'm just struggling, and I'd love to hang out. And I don't need to talk about why I'm struggling. I just need to hang out, or I just need to talk, or I just need to watch a movie or something, or just kind of and just know that people. I think what I've always struggled with when I'm in my deep depression of, like, getting suicidal and things, is thinking that no one. The statement that goes in my mind a lot is, when I'm really not doing well, is the world would be a better place without me in it. And that's a constant sentence that I've said in my brain since I was 11. And to change that, to, instead of thinking about the world would be a better place without me, and it is more of like, how can I make this moment better? And what can I do right now to change that? And whether that's talking to someone, and just kind of taking stock, like, with someone, like, is someone in my life not a great person for me to be in my life right now? And because, there's the constant talk of energy suckers and energy givers, and is someone a vampire, and you're not aware of it, and is there someone is giving you energy that you should kind of get more closer to, and learn more about?
Mhm.
So it's a lot of it's hard to tell a depressed. I can tell this from someone who's depressed. It's hard to tell someone depressed what to do,
Mhm.
because I am very stubborn as a
Mhm.
depressed person. I can make every rationalization of why you're wrong and why I am a piece of shit. Like, I could easily make a rationalization in my brain why that's true. And so it's hard for me to be like, yeah, you should do this, this, and this. To me, it's just like, just don't give up. Like, I mean, it's just a generic thing to say, but it's something I have to tell myself every day. And I shouldn't say every day, but a lot of times I'll have to just. It's simple as that. It's like, has my life gotten better? Does my life get better after having these horrible moments of depression? Yes, my history tells me that eventually it does. Like, it will, maybe a day or a week, but it does get better. That's my history. And so why not just wait until that happens, instead of making a decision that would, uh, you know, cause myself, my life pain, not to mention everyone around me. So it's just that constant belief of knowing that I'm worth more than maybe I believe in myself.
Yeah, and I hear too what's missing in many ways is people understanding how to support, understand, and hold space in those realities and not trying to fix, change, alter. And really what I see, well, it isn't something I've battled with. It's just like your reality is so real to the extent that that's where you're at. And so you can't come in and insert into someone's life and tell them they're not real or valid because like that's their real lived valid experience. Like that's what I think we try to do so much for people in those spaces is to simply get them to change. And it's like you literally are causing the very damage that has started it. Like it's there's just
Yeah.
something there that we don't know how to just hold. And that's something there's a concept I want to play around with and write on is the concept of how to love the trauma brain. And there's so much there that's
Mm,
in trauma
hmm
that we just don't know how to come alongside someone who's in a traumatic response. And that is life. Like that is black and white, their life. And to try to tell someone that's not their life is the very thing that's causing people to like, yeah, there's just a whole thing there that shows up. And so um what was wild too is you're talking to the concept of like Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm really
hmm
grateful for those that are choosing to speak publicly about their depression and really choosing like anonymous is the antithesis or being anonymous is not going to solve this for anyone. And so those that are the sticking out like a sore thumb in a way to take on that, which is again so challenging mentally, like to be able to take that on and talk publicly,
Mhm.
like thank you for doing that, and be just, I'm seeing that you've captured the proof that it's worth it. Is just to take those initial leaps are it's not easy to do. So just acknowledge you for showing up and sharing. And there's no right answers, just simply being that I see is where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, that's the end. There's no everyone's different. There's no right answer and there's not. I wish there was a pill or a phrase that I can give you that would just change someone's mind from being depressed to not. And that's not there. It's just more of it's understanding that it's tough, and I'll be there for someone if they need it. And if that's just sitting with you. Because a lot of times I would respect someone coming up to me and be like, you know what? I don't really understand depression,
Yeah.
but I'll sit here with you. Like I would respect that a million times more than someone trying to tell me what I should be doing. Like I would feel closer to someone admitting that they don't know what to do for me, as opposed to someone saying these are the things you have to do.
Yeah. And I see there's a component of judgment of incompetence when it's in reality. It's like, no, you're actually probably hyper competent, giving you the ability to work this out as the way that you are. And it's like a hyper vigilant experience of the brain. And so I think there's a component of how we come in at people, just as a general culture, is brutal when it comes to the depressed state. And it's like, no, I think you're actually more present to how much the world doesn't work. And like this person coming in denial. And I just really, there's people being valid and having space to be valid, and understood. Like I see that as the core tenet of being with it, so that you can begin to unpack and
Mhm.
discover, and not deny it. And I think that's much of what we've always done, is just deny that you
Yeah.
are that. And that's where I think is the issue. So if I were to speak anything, is just simply validating that how someone feels is 100% valid, and there's a reason behind it. And there's that ability to be with someone else that just helps you see that once you say it out loud, there's just a lot that changes in the inside. And not having someone attached to
Yes.
that, is like the most valuable thing on the planet. And so I feel like it's rare to find. And so that's again what I'm out to help create and formulate and create. Just,
Mhm.
I don't know what I'm doing. I just see it as a need. And so I don't know what's there. Just as something I
I
want
think
to,
that's I think that's the reason why it works.
yeah.
Not like having a plan probably would freak me out, but knowing that there's like you're just figuring it out as you go along makes it better for me
Yeah.
at least. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's my ADHD, but I just appreciate that more than someone who's like, here's what you have to do step by step. Like
Yeah.
I like that going into a group like I don't have a plan, but let's just talk. Like that's 100 times for me and for my brain
Yeah.
much better than going into a program that's like you have to do these steps. I just do better with
Oh,
let's have
okay.
no
Thank you
plan
for
and have fun
saying
and
that.
see what happens.
Thank you for saying that, because that gave me a lot of permission with the experience. I do see there's some core tenets of like stuff I need to create on my own side and be able to hold it. And just when I'm present to is like, okay, let's show up and like see what we create in a week, and we'll see. And just being
Yeah.
able to create an environment like that will
And
give.
having said that, I know that's me. Some people
Yeah.
are not like that. Like they
Yeah.
need that routine. Like they need to know what's like step by step
Yes.
what they need to do, which is
Totally.
again fine. People are different. Like that's
Yeah.
no judgment on either side.
Yeah.
I just know myself. Like if I jump into something and they tell me, especially something like a community of ADHD, it's like the last thing I want to do is follow a book on how to do this. Like it's I always find it funny if there's books written on ADHD. It's like you expect someone from ADHD to read this? Like no, that's not like, I haven't read one book on ADHD. Not because I don't want to, just because I get 4 pages in and I'm like, either one, yeah, I know this is who I am, or two, I just forget.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I
I know
always laugh like,
either. I feel the same way. And I really see there might need to be two buckets. One, do you want to be a feral cat? Or two, do you want to be a Labrador? Like, I don't know, maybe got to come up with something that's like structured. Like what experience do you want to
yeah,
have? Because it's like there is this wild and free, and there is a lot that do find safety in that. And so again, what I see is the biggest challenge, and why I just expanding the conversation around being neurodivergent and the expressions of people that are neurodivergent, because we see this is your template, this is how you are. I'm like, we literally break all molds and templates. Like, quit putting a template on us. Like, it's hard to be with. All that to say, I just want to simply say thank you for showing up exactly as you are and sharing and expanding, and I'll of course, link all the things with all the things everywhere. And I'm really excited to check out your raccoon video, and excited for the movie list and all these little things that got created. And yeah, just excited for seeing what you create. If you were to say, not to put pressure on things, if you were to say, if you had a vision for starting or a vision for what you're up to, a hidden dream or desire that you have live inside of you, is there anything that shows up to finish us out there?
Well, I've always said hidden dream. There's two dreams that I've always talked about, and either one would be fine. Both would be amazing. But there's always two dreams, and there's always business. It's always about owning my own business because that's what I do. And I've always, and I know that's an ADHD thing. I don't know whether people can relate to that, but it's very difficult for me to have bosses. I can't like I don't. It's not really an authority thing either. It's more about like I just like being able to do what I want when I want. So that's why I like it's nice having my own business now, but it's also there's two dreams that I've always had is there's a coffee shop, I think it's Detroit or Chicago, that was specifically for mental health and is for like to come and like relax if you're suffering from, anxiety, depression, any sort of mental health. You like that coffee shop was made for people to, and there's like resources they have there, like therapists that come in. Like it was just an amazing idea. So that's always been, I used to work at a coffee shop and it was one of my favorite jobs ever. So I thought, man, owning a coffee shop like that would be amazing. I've always thought and I at the time I even contacted them through email, and they responded saying they're not doing franchises because it was brand new and they like just opened. And I read some article and I got super excited, of course, in my ADHD self. I'm like, can I open one here? How do I franchise? And they're like, we just opened. So that's a dream. And the other dream is just because I love movies is I've always had this dream of owning a movie theater. Of just and being able to schedule the movies that I think people would like instead of new releases, having big events of older movies and just having a fun time like that. So those have always been my two dreams that I've like slowly kind of worked on a little bit at a time as I get older.
Yes, yes, yes. Can you host a movie night online? Is that a possibility?
I could look it up, maybe. Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I'm sure it's possible. I guarantee it is. I just have to look up on how that would do that. I know it's fun. My sister, because my sister and I live in different states, but we'll text each other and start movies at the same time. At like 8 p.m., we're starting this movie, and we'll start it, and then like we'll text each other, like just make each other laugh essentially the whole time. But we do that a lot. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure there's some kind of online thing
I
you
want
can
to play
do that.
around with a movie night for our community. I'd love to play around with that because that would be really freaking fun. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, definitely would. I'll look into that because that's a great idea. That's a great idea because
have you seen
I would
Baby
love to.
Driver? Have you seen the movie Baby Driver?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's like my favorite movie on the planet.
Oh, that's a great movie. Yeah, it's a great director. It's great car chases.
Yeah, that was one of my
Yeah,
favorites. All time
he made the Cornetto trilogy. That
favorite.
Edgar Wright. See,
I confident
Sean, he made.
you're in very good company with someone watching because I know I'm just ignorant on movies. And I know that the brilliance behind movie quotes in the movies, like in the neurodivergent space, is there's some real people out there that know what's up. So I know you're not alone.
Yes, his dialogue is amazing. That's his dialogue is one of the writer and directors that I will rewind because the dialogue is so good. Because
Okay.
he made Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz and World's End and Baby Driver, and he's really good at writing dialogue.
Okay. I would have never known.
Anyway,
Learn something new every day.
I'll stop because I could probably talk for another hour.
I'll be listening for the dialogue more next time when I go into that. And I just appreciate you. And anything else you can think
Thank
of
you.
before that?
No, thank you so much for having me. It's
Okay.
great. Thanks for creating this community. I love it.
Awesome. I'll be tagging all the things and we'll go from there. All right. Take care.